I gave a talk where I talked about the invisible donor. And I talked about a donor named Sarah. And I'd like to briefly share her story. So she's had a long day and she is up at night and she's scrolling and she sees a story about families who've been displaced in a flood and immediately says, I need to donate to this organization. And she reads this story and she feels something. She feels something. It's because in that moment, giving feels right. What happens when she clicks to donate? Page loads slowly, form is long. She puts in her payment, it fails. She tries it again, doesn't work. And what does she do? She stops. She's not angry. But she's tired and she's had a long day. So she logs off her mobile device or she closes her laptop and she goes to bed. That is the part of the giving moment that you must be absolutely on top of. That first moment, reducing friction, allowing Sarah to give, to follow her passion at such a critical moment.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Social Impact Solutions podcast. Today, I'm very excited to have a great conversation with Matt Bowe from Fundraise Up. We are going to talk about the Pulse of the Donor report that Fundraise Up recently released and lots of key insights around donor behavior that are critically important for nonprofits in 2026 and beyond. So today, my conversation with Matt really revolves around that Pulse of the Donor report. We really want to encourage everyone to go download that in the show notes of our podcast or on the Fundraise Up website. But as a quick introduction to Matt, Matt is currently the Director of Strategic and Enterprise Customer Success at Fundraise Up. Matt is an accomplished leader in the customer success field with over 11 years of experience driving growth and retention for high-impact organizations. Currently serving as the Director of Strategic and Enterprise Customer Success at Fundraise Up, he oversees a team of 8 and a portfolio of 150 strategic and enterprise customers. Matt has a background and professional experience with Fundraise Up currently, has worked with leading hotels of the world, Daily Pay, ADP, and Cornerstone, among others. Matt also is currently a board of director at the Minnesota YMCA Center for Youth Voice and also serves as a volunteer there. So again, I'm very excited for today's conversation. We talk a lot about the value of tech stacks, how technology such as Fundraise Up can really help nonprofits increase donor acquisition, donor retention. We talk a lot about the findings and the insights of the new Pulse of the Donor report that reveal mobile first and digital first donation behavior and how key insights have shifted for individual giving, and that just because gift sizes might be decreasing doesn't mean that donors are disengaging. In fact, one of the key findings is that donors are sticking around longer and giving on a recurring basis, even though some of those single gifts might be reducing in size. So definitely give this podcast a listen. Great insights for 2026 fundraising trends that are really helpful for nonprofit organizations. Hi, Matt. Welcome to the Social Impact Solutions podcast. How are you today?
Good. Thank you so much for having me, Lauren.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm super excited for today's conversation. Really excited to hear about your insights and expertise on the Fundraise Up Pulse of the Donor report that was recently released. So Matt, I know that you have been with Fundraise Up for a while. Our team at Social Impact Solutions has partnered with Fundraise Up for, I believe, at least 3 years now, and we're a huge proponent of your platform. And so Fundraise Up, just as a quick high-level overview, is a digital fundraising platform that helps nonprofits raise more money by improving their donation experience for supporters. So I know we'll dive into a lot of Fundraise Up features today, but Matt, I would love to, and I know our whole conversation today is going to revolve around the new Pulse of the Donor report, but I would love to just high-level overview, what are your big 1 to 3 takeaways from the Pulse of the Donor report that I know we'll dive into a lot of detail throughout today's conversation, but just high level overview if you could give our listeners a nice introduction to that report.
Well, thank you so much, Lauren. And this is a great report for nonprofits in the 4 regions that we focused on, but also around the world as we are planning for 2026, a year that is going to be a year full of opportunity within the nonprofit space. And when we look at the Pulse of the Donor report, I think there are a couple of themes that really stand out. And one of the themes that we'll dig into is this theme of the giving paradox and what we want to understand when it comes to the main metrics that we've seen, which is that one-time donation amounts are going down. However, giving volume across a number of different metrics is going up. So how do we understand that? How do we want to position that? I think the other theme that we'll talk about that jumped out to me that we are speaking with our customer base about is the theme of looking across your technology stack to make sure that your infrastructure is optimized to capture the changing landscape that we see. We'll talk a little bit later about social giving, and certainly as we move into that landscape of social giving, it will begin to become more and more of an important part of your giving strategy. And then I think the other key theme, and this is a theme that exists in all donation strategies, are you in touch with that giving journey from your donor? Do you understand what it is? Have you released all of the friction points from that journey? And that is both the utilization of your tech stack, utilization of best-in-class tools like Fundraise Up, and also the strategies that you're using to bring that donor into your ecosystem and manage your relationship with that donor to maximize long-term value. Those are I think, the big themes that jumped out to me. And certainly as we're sharing this report with customers, we are hearing a lot of positive feedback about the report and a lot of ideation around how we can work together to maximize the value of the report and put some bets out there to see if we can drive better donation outcomes and increased engagement.
Awesome. Thank you for that overview, Matt. I'm excited to dive into each of those pieces a little bit further. I know I read through the Pulse of the Donor report right after it first came out. Lots of great insights. And so I'm excited to dive into this further today, hear from you. I know I'll learn a lot, and I hope that our audience and all of our listeners do too. So with that being said, would love to dive into really what you and your team at Fundraise Up have seen and learned with the state of donor behavior. And you already alluded to this a little bit. And I believe this is the second year that the Pulse of the Donor report has come out. So the second year. And so would love to just talk through what are some of those major donor behavior shifts that were really revealed from this 2025 report that was released early in 2026 and that can really help nonprofits navigate donor behavior throughout the year.
I think it's an exciting report in that it gives us a picture into a landscape that's changing. And the first part of that landscape that the report highlights is the fact that the era of mobile giving is here. This report covered 4 different regions of the world: the United States, Canada, the UK, and Australia. And in every region except for Canada, mobile donations now represent over 50% of the donation volume that came through Fundraise Up for the 1,000 organizations that are included in the report. So that is absolutely a big shift that we have seen over the course of the last several years. Closely related to that, we are seeing a dramatic uptick in use of payment options such as Apple Pay. A dramatic increase. I believe that Apple Pay this year was up significantly year over year on the measure of about 4%. And so that payment method is growing, and it's in alignment with that mobile growth. The second item that I would highlight is that donors are passionate and engaged. I think sometimes when we look at these reports, we are looking for signs of weakness. We're looking for signs of distress. We don't see that in the report. We see a donor base that continues to be passionate, continues to be engaged. The third piece, and I alluded to this earlier, is that social giving is exploding. And we're seeing that across our enterprise as well as we work with different customers and as we really think about how to maximize their strategies. And certainly in the social space, there are a number of strategies that can be maximized in terms of conversion. For example, the Facebook ecosystem does an excellent job there. But in terms of driving recurring growth, TikTok is outperforming every other social platform. So that's an area to be aware of, to take a look at your presence in those spaces and optimize for those trends. And the thing I wrote in my notes as I was preparing for our conversation is a question that we're asking our customers regularly, which is, are you ready? Are you ready for the time that we are about to jump into? Have you optimized your technology stack, and are you present in these rapidly growing areas of donation activity and of donor activity? And so we're working with our customers each day, challenging them with that question. But I think this report gives a number of different valuable insights for how you can take action on this shifting landscape.
Absolutely. Definitely. And I think everything you've shared, is very insightful, while at the same time probably predicted, with mobile giving, with social performance, social giving, while at the same time, I'm sure at Fundraise Up and definitely our team at Social Impact Solutions, we talk to a lot of organizations that aren't ready, right? And so definitely want your Pulse of the Donor report, this conversation, to be something that helps people understand that this isn't any longer a prediction into the future. It's absolutely current and has taken place, is taking place, and how organizations can really shift and adapt accordingly. So I appreciate those insights that you shared.
I was going to agree with you. Absolutely. The future is here now. And it's an exciting future. Obviously, the donor shifts that we see across the world in terms of demographic shifts are significant. And so we want to make sure that we're equipped and thoughtful as we jump into the future about building out, as I said, our technology stack, making sure we understand that the donor experience is optimized, and doing everything we can to reach and keep this shifting donor population around the world.
Most definitely. So let's dive into something that is a paradox that you mentioned earlier in the introduction, and absolutely a huge highlight of the Pulse of the Donor report that recently came out, but that you are seeing, and Fundraise Up is seeing, that donation volume is increasing while the average gift size might be decreasing. Let's dive into that a little bit and really unpack what the data and the report is showing, and just some of your insights around that donor paradox.
Yeah. As we all know, retention is everything when it comes to our donor base. That will never change. And I think that when we see that that those smaller gifts and the gift size decline, it can cause alarm if we don't see the whole picture. And so when we look at the whole picture, we would make the case that more donors and smaller gifts is not a decline. It is an opportunity, and it's a shift towards a revenue model that will reward your infrastructure and marketing strategies for your recurring donors over single donation performance. So we have been, I think, consistent in terms of the way that we've developed our platform to make sure that we reduce friction, which is one of our core tenets of who we are, and that we also give our customers every opportunity to keep their recurring donor base. And so two things can be true at once, right? That average amount going down and the ability to keep and grow the recurring base are both true. And so what we are working with our customers to make sure they understand is that that is an opportunity. We don't want to overread that headline amount with the decreased amount of single gifts. And we want to focus on retention. When you look at the report, I believe it shows that recurring enrollments are up. And when we look at, our retention across our different geographies that the report covers, we're continuing to hold relatively steady in sort of that 40 to 60% range, depending on geography. So this is an opportunity, I think, to look at that and look at the larger picture. I also might make the argument, Lauren, that this is an opportunity to embrace those smaller gifts, right? So we look at the smaller gift size and we say, okay, what does that mean? And if we look at it positively, we want to look and say, this is a donor that has a runway over the lifetime value of their relationship with our nonprofit. And, that to make that happen, right, we have to have the right infrastructure, as I discussed earlier. We also want to craft a donor journey that is thoughtful and meets these donors where they are. So lots of different opportunities that we see in this data. And I think that the long-term value focus is the focus that will separate organizations that continue to thrive from those who start to fall back in this environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And just as an example, a little bit of an aside, but just to your point and what you're finding in this data, just this week, so Tuesday of this week, one of our team members made a small donation to a very small local nonprofit. And so on Tuesday, she was telling me about this process, and they're a small nonprofit, but she was going to make a small donation, a one-time donation for some engagement that she had had with them over the last couple of weeks. And I don't know what platform they use, so I don't know if it's Fundraise Up or not, but she was prompted to, rather than giving $50, you could give, $5 on a monthly recurring basis. And the note said, you'll have a larger impact, a greater impact. It went on to explain a little bit of why without being too verbose or too long-winded. And so I think that's exactly to your point, Matt, and what your team has found through this report and what you're reporting on today. And I believe that organization has picked that up and is, communicating how important it is for nonprofits to have monthly recurring givers, not just one-time gifts. But it seems like that's in alignment with the donor shift as well, which is fantastic. It's not always that we see donor behavior changing in a way that is necessarily advantageous to the nonprofit. And so I think it can be viewed different ways, right? Sometimes larger gifts are what the organizations are wanting, while at the same time having that lifetime value, more recurring gifts, and that donor journey in place, I think is what all of us, whether it's nonprofit consultants, nonprofit tech, nonprofits themselves, can all agree that those pieces are really critical over the long term. So I appreciate those insights. Yeah, would love to hear any other insights you have.
That's a great example. And another one came to mind, and the example that comes to my mind, right, is a function that we have in Fundraise Up that's been extremely successful, and that's our pause to cancel opportunity that we give to recurring donors. So we actually looked this up, and over the course of the last year, in the consumer subscription space, so think about Netflix as a leader in this space. The consumer subscription space is seeing an explosion in sort of the pause to cancel, pause to resume life cycle of their users. And I want to say that that is somewhere in the nature of 310%, where they're seeing this incredible jump in subscribers who are wanting to pause but maybe wanting to come back. And so there's a real opportunity there within your donor base to identify those donors and design a strategy for their journey to make sure that they stay connected with you. And the thing I love about your example is, that's a great example of that, right? Instead of making that one-time donation, we would like to invest in you as our donor over time. And our willing to forego some of that immediate revenue in order to maximize that long-term value. So I love that example, and I think there are examples of that throughout our experience with our customers now. And I think we'll see more and more of those as these social channels continue to expand and as the donor population continues to grow. We will need to address those specific journeys and make sure that we're meeting our donors where they are.
Definitely. I feel like we could spend our whole conversation probably just talking about the pieces we've already covered. But just wrapping up this section before we move on, would you say that this is more of a short-term shift, long-term shift, a little bit hard to say?
Yeah, I think it's hard to say, and there is no reason to say that this is a short-term shift. So when we look at kind of the way that the world is moving right now, um, I think we're seeing the beginning of several trends. And we've already talked about mobile, and there's no reason to see that trend decline. Similarly with social, and similarly with the tech stack becoming more innovative, more responsive, particularly the donation experience. So as I think about all of these trends, I think they will continue. And I think that in the scope of the donors that we are working with, their passion for the causes that they are involved with will also continue. And so, again, we want to make sure that we are designing journeys that meet those donors where they are and allow them to express that passion and invest in the missions of our organizations.
Yeah, that makes sense. Great. Well, thank you so much for those insights and still a high level overview of the report. But just moving on a little bit, when it comes to a lot of the trends, the data, the insights in the Pulse of the Donor report, what would you say is maybe the most common or the top 2 to 3 most common difficulties, maybe misunderstandings that nonprofits can have around fundraising data and what's highlighted in this most recent report?
Yeah, I certainly think we discussed that just a little bit, right? It's the temptation to overread. There are opportunities within this report that I would encourage organizations to take a close look at. And in fact, there are a number of suggestions in the report for optimizing your digital fundraising strategy and thinking about some of the conclusions of the report. So I would those who are reading the report, those who are hearing our podcast today, to really take a close look at some of those suggestions and work closely with your partners on bringing those suggestions that work the best for you to life. So that would be the first thing I would say is just making sure that we can take a look at the data, not overread it, and turn it into action to be able to address this moment. And when we think about modern strategies, I mentioned this earlier, making sure that you are optimizing your infrastructure and your data. I mean, think about it, right? With that, your infrastructure and your data combined with your donor journey is really what's going to lead you to your long-term value. Mm-hmm. You have to have a marketing strategy around that. You have to have outreach. You have to have executive and board level support. But you really need to have those pieces in place, and you need to be able to know for certain that you're on top of those pieces. And as I mentioned earlier too, just making sure that we look at that smaller gift size as an opportunity, something to embrace and something to look to expand. I mean, I think your example was an excellent one. Not be fearful of the performance of the one-time gift. Look at the bigger picture.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know you've already mentioned this in various pieces, but just diving a little bit deeper into our team sees a lot of organizations that are really focused on donor acquisition, right? I'm sure that Fundraise Up and your team hears this a lot as well. Your report, what we're talking about today, and even before this recent report came out, I think all of us are saying, yeah, look at lifetime value, look at recurring gifts. And so I know it's a loaded question with a lot of pieces, but are there any additional components that you would add to donor acquisition versus retention, and lifetime value versus larger single gifts?
Yeah, certainly. When I think about donor acquisition, that is a critical piece of the story.
Mhm.
Uh, and so far, I may have been playing it down a little bit, but I'm not intending to do that. I certainly would say that there are a number of exciting donor acquisition strategies that we are working with our customers on this year. Certainly at Fundraise Up, we believe that we are positioned to take some steps forward in our roadmap that allow for additional feature sets that allow for donor acquisition through new channels, new mobile channels, new channels that exist in social. And we are putting, I think, a lot of effort into making sure that we're expanding in the peer-to-peer space and other spaces. And so those are all donor acquisition plays. And I think with donor acquisition, one of the things that perhaps has not changed over the years is the need to have as wide of a net as possible. Certainly, you're going to overinvest in certain channels, but you also don't want to ignore other channels. In cases where you may not be certain that those channels are going to produce results, run tests, work with your partners to A/B test some of those acquisition strategies and determine whether or not they're right for your organization. So there are a lot of exciting things that are happening in the donor acquisition space this year, and certainly tying in with the main findings of the report. Are we reaching out on TikTok? Do we have a presence on Facebook, on Instagram? What is our mobile strategy? Is it a multi-pronged strategy where we're trying to reach donors through different mobile channels, such as text channels?
Mhm.
So all sorts of different strategies there that I think, the our organizations that we work with, as well as all nonprofits, are always constrained on resources and constrained on investment capital. But running A/B tests and making some kind of small investments in different areas that may yield results, I think, is a critical part of success in this environment.
Sure. And so many things that you said are a huge part of the reason that I am such a fan of Fundraise Up, right? I know that your stats, which I don't know them by heart, but your stats around donor acquisition, donor retention are phenomenal. And I know that organizations that use your platform see huge improvement in both, right? On the acquisition and the retention side. And then to your point about resources and cost for nonprofits, I believe it's about 80% of donors cover the cost of Fundraise Up when they're making a donation or a transaction. Is that right? It's about 80%.
It's north of that, and in fact, we use a very innovative AI tool set to help donors make the correct cost choices. We call that predictive cost coverage, and that AI tool set has proven to be extremely valuable for our customers in making sure that they can capture more of that donation revenue. We're also, I, I would be remiss if I didn't say this, but at Fundraise Up, we also have, and I do have a bias, but we have the very best go to market team out there. And so we're positioned well with our experience and our background, be it in nonprofits, in large technology spaces. We have a number of individuals from the CRM space. We're well positioned to help maximize our customers and our prospects' donation strategies by taking our best in class tool set and combining it with a passionate team of people that work directly with our customers every day to make sure that they're exceeding their goals. We're proud of the work that we do, and we're excited to continue that work.
Most definitely. Well, let's dive into a little bit more of the tech stack pieces that we, again, could probably just do a whole conversation on this, but just the technology, the donor experience, like the mobile components, a lot of pieces that we won't have time to talk about everything, but the high points that the Pulse of the Donor report is revealing about the donor experience and digital first giving that Fundraise Up really prioritizes, and how you guys make Fundraise Up such a great platform and easy to use, whether that's mobile, digital, all of the above?
Well, as we look at the mobile stats from the report, the average time to donate on mobile now has gone down. I think it went down 7% year over year. It's now at 120 seconds. I think it's just shy of 121 seconds. And so that moment is very important, and it's very important that that time to donate is low. And when I think about the tech stack, I'm going to dig into some more details here in a moment. I think it's important to, before you work on your tech stack and optimizing it, to remind yourself of what that donor journey looks like today. Recently, I gave a talk where I talked about the invisible donor, and I talked about a donor named Sarah. And if I may be so bold, I'd like to briefly share her story. So she's had a long day, and she is up at night and she's scrolling and she sees a story about families who've been displaced in a flood, and immediately says, I need to donate to this organization. And she reads this story and she feels something. She feels something because the way that this story is positioned really guides her value set and causes her to say she's going to act and she's going to give. And it's not because somebody has asked her 5 times. It's not because of a specific campaign. It's because in that moment, giving feels right. So now we have the moment, and I'm going to call this the giving moment. What happens when she clicks to donate? Page loads slowly. Form is long. She puts in her payment. It fails. She tries it again. Doesn't work. And what does she do? She stops. She's not angry, but she's tired and she's had a long day. So she logs off her mobile device or she closes her laptop and she goes to bed. That is the part of the giving moment that you must be absolutely on top of. That first moment, reducing friction, allowing Sarah to give, to follow her passion at such a critical moment. So everything you do in technology infrastructure has to be in service of that moment because everything flows from that moment, right? If Sarah never gives, you've just lost the opportunity to turn her into a recurring giver to increase the lifetime value of her relationship with your organization. So I like to call that the giving moment. And I think Sarah's story is a story that is common. However, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be if you're focused on that part of the journey. We talked about mobile and really making sure that we are optimizing, those mobile capabilities. That is a key part of it as well. And then it really comes down to some of the other strategies that you can deploy on your donation with your donation portal, whether that be Fundraise Up, whether that be someone else, whether that be a custom experience, whatever donation experience you have. How can you maximize for that donor? So this at Fundraise Up is where we work with customers on making sure that they understand our pre and post donation upsell feature. We're obviously maximizing campaigns. We have a social proof element on the platform that allows you to instantaneously see others who are giving. We've got sticky buttons. We have the post donation upsell upgrade links. We have other features such as an abandoned donation email series that converts at an extremely high rate. In fact, just recently, we met with 2 customers. We met with one customer who has driven 250,000 euros simply out of the abandoned donations email series. That's 250,000 euros that would be lost. Another customer is converting, they're recovering at a 38% rate off of that email. When across our customer base, that rate of recovery is lower than that. So they are tripling our standard rate of recovery across that email. So it's thinking about those strategies, and then it's making sure that you are aligning the data flow between your source systems, your donation system, your CRM, your reporting, tool sets, your other systems, to make sure that you have the best possible data to make the quickest decisions on your donor strategies. And so that, when we think about technology, it's a lot of work. There's a lot there. But I think that it really goes back to continuously refining your experience and really centering on that experience. Is Sarah able to donate, and is it a seamless experience? So when she goes to bed, she feels good. I am helping people. Mm-hmm. And she gets a better night's sleep by helping people than she does by going to bed frustrated and wondering whether or not she's going to have time tomorrow to look into this further and try and solve the problems that she just encountered.
Right. Yeah. I think that's such a great story, great analogy, a great reality also that you just outlined, Matt, right? I mean, all of us, and I think a lot of people still think this is age dependent and, oh, well, our donors are, 50 plus, 65 plus. And the reality is that's not true. I know that you guys at Fundraise Up know that's not true. And the data is there to prove it, that, older individuals, middle-aged individuals, younger individuals, everyone has smartphones. Everyone is used to that speed of Amazon, right? I open the Amazon app, I order what I need. It's becomes a monthly subscription or not. And it's 1 or 2, maybe 3 clicks at most, and it's done. And I know it will be here today, tomorrow, or at latest the next day. And for better or for worse, we're all geared to expect that ease of a checkout process. Mobile giving, sometimes on a laptop, but if we're talking Amazon, it's probably mobile. And like you just outlined, why should that be different and more cumbersome and more time consuming and more frustrating when someone's trying to donate to a good cause? And the reality is it shouldn't be, and it doesn't have to be, right? Fundraise Up has done a beautiful job of making the UI, UX, the donor experience very nice, very seamless. And I also appreciate that you guys have done that on the donor user experience side, as well as, I would say, for nonprofit leaders who are listening to this, the other side of it, the part that the nonprofit themselves looks at. I've been in the back end of the Fundraise Up system plenty of times on behalf of our clients, and that side is also very user friendly, in my opinion. So lots of Fundraise Up plugs today, but it really is a great platform, and I truly do mean that.
Yeah, well, we appreciate those plugs. It's a great platform, a great go-to-market team, and I also would be remiss if I didn't say that we have a product team that is exceptionally well connected with the industry and with the needs of our customers. And I know this because I meet with them every 2 weeks. I met with them a couple of hours earlier, and the conversation is always focused on customer needs, on how we can optimize the platform for our customers, making sure that we can solve issues that come up. And sometimes, by the way, those aren't end user donor experience issues. Sometimes they're simply issues with how we can make that integration better, how we can improve the APIs, how we can make sure that we understand, the difference between different instances of Salesforce, for example, that our customers might be on, because they are on different instances of Salesforce, even though Salesforce has a specific nonprofit instance. So, it's all of those things that I think make us special. And it's also a real commitment to driving donor outcomes in terms of the donor experience, but also donation volume and outcomes for the customer.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, as we start to wrap up our time together in today's conversation, just sort of as a closing question, would love to know from you. I know we've covered a lot, and there's a lot more in your report that we have not covered that I definitely want to encourage people to download and read. What would you say if you were going to highlight one key digital fundraising insight? What would you encourage nonprofit leaders to really pay attention to and prioritize, or even begin to shift in 2026?
Yeah, I think if I were to choose one, I think it would be to measure everything and question everything. That is the donor journey, measuring the donor journey and making sure you understand it. That is the effectiveness, that's your conversion rate. That is all of the traditional metrics that you are measuring today, your average gift size, your retention rate, your recurring donor book performance, all of that. But then it's also other things. I mean, for example, in the report, there's a great suggestion that I want to highlight here, that I think a lot of nonprofits can put into place today, and that is, can you begin to measure the impact of your social track, kind of the impact of your social footprint and how it is performing, and then benchmark that against some of your other channels. I think sometimes our customers are out in the social space, but I'm not sure they always think of that in the as additional channels that can convert in the same way that an email channel may convert or another channel may convert. So again, measuring everything and questioning everything, I think, is a very healthy way to look at optimization opportunities for your strategy. And then the other thing I would say is I'm a strong believer in leaning on your partners. Identify specific needs that you have from your partners, specific benchmarks they can bring into the conversation, the performance of other customers, historical areas that maybe have been tested and have failed. And on the Fundraise Up website, we have a page that tracks all of our AB donation activity. We want to understand those that have worked and those that have failed. And then I think, again, you just put it back into that measure everything and question everything philosophy. And I think that will drive optimal outcomes.
Yeah. Obviously, I'm biased, and our team is really big on data collection. We work with our clients more on collecting programmatic data. Not that we shy away from marketing or fundraising data. That's definitely not the case. But so I'm biased, and our team is huge on data collection, data analysis, and those insights really driving decision making, strategy, and future planning. So some of our listeners probably, some people just different personality types, and some people love that and some people don't. But I think the reality is in 2026, when, you do have technology, digital systems that can really help with these pieces. Fundraise Up has done a phenomenal job with AI features. And so having a lot of those data points and insights is really feasible for the individual nonprofit organizations using Fundraise Up. And then you guys do a lot of the legwork to, like you just said, make it public what A/B testing is and isn't working, and then in your reports. So I don't want people to hear that and think, oh, that's just so much more work. It's not always easy, but I think Fundraise Up is making it much easier for those data components to be captured and analyzed so that it's not necessarily more work for the nonprofit leaders.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I think you said it very well. And, again, when we talked about the giving moment and, thinking about that, and perhaps we would call the value adventure, thinking about sort of that long-term relationship that you have with your donors. When you think of that long-term relationship and the value that it provides, hopefully that provides better context into the investments that you are making to get there.
Absolutely. Well, Matt, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate your time. Are there any final takeaways that you want to share with our audience?
I thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, Lauren, and I would encourage all of you to check out the report. You can go to our website, fundraiseup.com. You click on the Resource Center tab, and then you click on the Pulse of the Donor 2026 report. And then there's a button there that says View the Report, and you can read it. Some exceptional insights there, and definitely looking forward to continuing to work with our extraordinary team and our extraordinary customers to bring many of these suggestions to life for Fundraise Up customers.
Wonderful. And we will put the link to the Pulse of the Donor 2026 report in the show notes as well. So that'll be an easy place for people to go and access that report, as well as through the Fundraise Up website. But Matt, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your insights and your partnership through Fundraise Up. And I'm excited to keep the conversation going and continue our partnership.
It's been a pleasure, Lauren. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks so much.